nos quedemos en casa siempre y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. The new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno y lo dieron todo lo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras se aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children. And they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre el liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo de lo público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement quédate en casa, que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, Our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to
I will touch briefly on three that directly impact our MSMEs. So if we could go to the next slide, please. We'll start with the Investment Summit. And then we'll talk about the National Digital Agenda and our legal environment. So if we go to the next slide, we will discuss the Investment Summit. On the 10th and 11th of November of this year, Belize hosted the Investment Summit 2021 with the theme, Belize Open for Business, attended by local and international investors. One of the highlights of the summit was the signing of the Innovation Pact Manifesto by Prime Minister John Briceño. The goal of the Innovation Pact is to stimulate a culture of innovation in Belize that increases investment in science, technology, and innovation activities. These investments contribute to a more competitive and developed economy that support the well-being of all Belizeans. The Innovation Pact is a symbolic commitment from the public and private sectors, academia, business associations, the media, and society who recognize innovation as an engine of growth and a promoter of equity and good governance. Next slide, please. So we have a number of commitments, 7, to increase investment in science, technology, and innovation activities, understanding that these will be the engine of growth and development. 2, to develop an innovation culture that encourages innovative solutions and risk-taking. 3, train human talent in new technologies, innovation, and market trends that contribute to stimulating the economy and creating more jobs. 4, support innovation champions that coordinate ecosystem actors to encourage the circulation of innovative ideas and support the private sector in developing competitive business models. The 5th, build internal innovation capabilities that contribute to a better economy. And finally, promote the dissemination, understanding, and commitment of the Innovation Pact. A key component of this initiative is the innovation auto-diagnostic tool that MSMEs are encouraged to use. The tool assists businesses to identify their strengths and weaknesses and to develop a plan to address gaps in innovation capabilities. It is a perception-based tool used for respondents to uncover the required capabilities to innovate. The government can encourage innovation, but ultimately entrepreneurs and business people will be the ones who must take the steps to see things differently and pursue a new path based on its promise for higher productivity, international competitiveness, and sustainable returns. The disruption brought on by COVID-19 upon our already vulnerable economy may have produced a setting where our MSMEs are more open to a science, technology, and innovation transformation. The second initiative we'd like to share this morning is our National Digital Agenda, which was launched only 2 days ago. The primary goal of the agenda is to make government more accountable, efficient, and effective, and to make transactions less cumbersome and reduce the cost of doing business, especially for MSMEs and citizens generally. The digital agenda seeks to create the enabling environment required for an integrated transformation and modernization of the state, from infrastructure and connectivity programs to innovation and modern technologies application programs. Primary objectives of the new digitization plan are to increase and improve accountability, to improve transparency, to reduce the cost of government procurement, to build trust in government services, to increase government revenue, train public servants in the use of ICT, protect data and ensure cyber security, and digitize documents across ministries. The digital agenda is built on 3 pillars, mainly ICT and technology enablers, digital government, and digitization for recovery. And these pillars have a set program over the next 4 years. And finally, in the legal environment, we have embarked on the modernization of our laws that will make it easier to start and conduct business. This is aimed to positively impact MSMEs that in many cases are at significant disadvantage relative to larger established businesses. These changes include the Electronic Transactions Act, the Data Protection Act, the Public Sector Data Sharing Act, the Electronic Evidence Act, and the Cyberbullying Act. These laws have improved our abilities to deal with digital data and allow us to lower transactions costs and optimize limited resources. And so, distinguished ministers and delegates, thank you for this opportunity to share these 3 initiatives that aim to transform our MSME sector through science, technology, and innovation. We acknowledge the invaluable contributions of the IDB and the OAS in supporting the realization of these achievements. As a small developing nation, it is critical for us to act with diligence and alacrity to seize the moment, or risk an ever-widening gap that will have no positive benefits for our future generations. We therefore look forward to exploring and establishing strategic partnerships and cooperation with you, our OAS family. We seek, like you do, the sustainable human development of our country and of our region. We wish you all prosperity and the fulfillment of your goals and dreams. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Zabani, for your very interesting presentation on the initiatives implemented by your government to support the MSMEs in Belize. Next, we give a cordial welcome to Miss Doralisa Niashimba, Deputy Secretary for Research, Innovation and Technology Transfer of the National Secretariat for Higher Education, Science, Technology and Innovation of Ecuador. Deputy Secretary, it is our pleasure to have you here today. You have the floor.
Good morning. Can you just please confirm that you're all viewing my screen? Yes, we are. But it's not in presentation formats. So on behalf of CENICIT, I would like to greet all of you fraternally. I would also like to thank the OAS for this invitation. As well as congratulate my colleagues for their excellent presentations. CENICIT in Ecuador has many best practices and technology transfer examples that we'd like to share with you. The Secretary of Research, Innovation and Technology Transfer, CENICIT, heads higher education, science, technology, innovation, and others, coordinating its applications through the stakeholders that comprise its systems by implementing projects and programs that provide equal access to higher education. Academic development, technology development, and strengthening of human capacities is all part of what we do. We also have our Subsecretariat of Technology Transfer and Research, which heads strategic execution of public policies geared at research and promotes science, as well as strengthen the National Academy of Science at both the national and international level in order to provide support for science and technology. Sorry, we're just viewing the presentation, but not in presentation format. Pardon the interruption. How about there? I can do it for you. I can do it for you. Yes. If you can help me, I will accept your help. How about now? Just let me know when the next slide follows. Just let me know. Thank you. I will. So let me continue. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so I was explaining the system of CENICIT. May I begin? Please let me know when I can begin. Sure, you have the floor. Thank you. So the National System for Science, Technology, Innovation, and Ancestral Knowledge is composed of universities, higher education institutions, local communities, local government, the productive sector, researchers, and ethics institutions, as well as innovation agencies, public research institutions. And all of these different stakeholders work in a coordinated fashion to build and develop the system of steady seat to benefit society. Next slide. The Higher Education Secretariat, steady seat, composed hubs for technology transfer. These are web spaces or websites that are aimed at technology transfer, entrepreneurship, and they work in a collaborative fashion with the productive sector, academia, and the state. It is a point of a meeting point, we can say, for collaborative exchange with these three sectors. Its main focus lies in looking at analyzing the productive sectors of each region and strengthening each of these national economies to a maximum level to leverage the economy. So the hub ITTs are 7, and they're located in each of our territories. And the idea was to fill a regional gap and be able to use international practices as well to benefit each of these areas of influence. These hubs began to work or began to function in 2019 in a structured manner and based on policies that were passed by the government, Seneseat's policies. And it's aimed at funding, providing funding for seed capital for technology transfer projects with a high potential. And they work together with the member institutions of each hub that's able to, in order to develop these efforts as part of MSMEs. Work is also done in the area of influence to be able to resolve challenges aimed at the MSMEs to improve their productivity. The central government works together with the state to be able to strengthen these hubs financially as well. And the idea is for them to be knowledge-based. And the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries also helps bolster the MSMEs throughout the country. The objective is to be able to strengthen and contribute vigorously to these MSMEs and attain sustainable development, and to be able to allow them to work within with emerging technology throughout the national territory. And Seneseat works in the different areas of influence through these hubs and increases efforts for development of the country, and especially after the pandemic, it's helping to fill in economic gaps. Thank you.
Are interesting and inspiring model to support the creation and acceleration of technology-based businesses. Now I'm very happy to extend a warm welcome to Ms. Ana Romero, Executive Deputy Director of the Honduran Institute of Science, Technology and Innovation. Ms. Romero, welcome, you have the floor.
Hello, good morning. I would like to thank the OAS for this opportunity to speak. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about MSMEs in our country. We have 742,000 MSMEs in our country, which contribute to 60% of our GDP and create 7 out of 10 jobs in Honduras. Just to tell you a little bit about what happened in the 70s and 80s, MSMEs served as a way to just survive poverty. It was a way that poor people lived. That's very different from what we see right now, which is that it's being used as a tool to fight poverty. At that time, government administrations didn't place a lot of importance on that sector rather. And throughout their presidential terms, they just didn't focus much on it. Then in the 90s, with help from international financial institutions, we were able to work alongside the government and the private sector to change the country's development model. So then in the 90s and the 2000s, we created the support system for the informal sector, which had the objectives of strengthening financial intermediation, offering more affordable interest rates, and creating better market conditions for those companies. In 2018, the government passed a law for micro and small enterprises, which led to some reforms in 2019 and 2020. This decree gives entrepreneurs tax breaks and gives them favorable loans for 5-year periods and grace periods to get operating permits. We know that the pandemic really showed that in an increasingly digitalized world, we have to have digital processes for enterprises to survive, and that applies for businesses across the board. And this applies even more so for small businesses in remote locations. In this context, businesses realize that change should be linked to new digital models, and by increasing e-commerce and having virtual platforms available to customers. Enterprises that decided to undertake this new journey, where we've all had to adapt, have run into constraining factors because they face a lack of information, a lack of knowledge about how to harness these technologies, and a lack of knowledge of the best applications for their companies and resources to undertake a digital transformation based on their needs. Given all of those factors over the last few years, the government has taken actions to fight these limiting factors as they undertake this digital transformation. I'll tell you about some specific examples of this. We have our Professional Training Institute, which launched courses on business administration, IT, design, and these were all focused on MSMEs, or small businesses in general. With the help of UNDP, a unit was created to support MSMEs as well, and that's working at a regional level. A unit was also created which centralized services for MSMEs, and there's now one single portal to make transactions much less cumbersome. There are transactions that used to take months, and now businesses can obtain permits and register their charters in just 1 week online, and they can do it from home. And working through the Institute of Science since 2016 at the instructions of the President, we have had a program that targets young entrepreneurs. Training events have been held for this population. We received more than $300,000 in seed capital to support high potential innovations that are creating jobs. We've supported more than 30,000 people since 2016 in the 5 sectors where this program has been launched. It focuses on scientific innovation, technology transfers. And if we continue to focus on this, it can make MSMEs resilient to crises. Honduran MSMEs by having access to financing and global trends, can work through new technologies to operate better. And by introducing that way of thinking, we can improve the positioning of these MSMEs globally. So not just within Honduras, but in the global market as well. We need to continue to further develop these structures and have this kind of dialogue so that we can foster access to innovation, technology, science, and business skills. All of that so we can help MSMEs develop better business models. That's what I can tell you from Honduras about science, technology, and MSMEs. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Romero, for your very comprehensive presentation and for you sharing your country's experience and good practices to assist MSMEs. I give the floor to Mr. Julian Ferro, Director of Knowledge Transfer and Use at the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation of Colombia. You have the floor.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning to all. Sorry about that. I had forgotten to request the floor. First of all, we would like to thank the Technical Secretariat of COMICIT and Jamaica for hosting this meeting for ministers. This is a very important topic. We would also like to commend Minister Vass on serving as the chair of this meeting. We would also like to highlight that Colombia, as pro-temporary chair of COMCIT, has promoted this kind of activity. So in that context, I would like to share with you some activities that we've been undertaking from the Ministry of Science and Technology. If you'd like, you could go to the next slide, please. Great, so I'll tell you that at the Ministry of Science and Technology in Colombia, which is a rather young ministry, we've taken many initiatives to promote science and technology. We've worked above all to promote the development of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. The first part of our strategy is what we see on the left in yellow, which is to promote innovation pacts and support business innovation systems. This has allowed us to reach 71% of the departments in Colombia. The second part, which you can see in blue, is focused more on technology transfer. We carry out very coordinated strategies with companies and have an intellectual property component as well, which is related more to patents and taking advantage of patents. This is closely linked to another topic we've worked on, which is ensuring that micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises can develop research and development units. The next block that you see is much more focused on biodiversity and Colombia's strength in that area. We've also launched a government strategy that covers several prototypes related to biodiversity, which is part of what we've been working on with our MSMEs. We also have new entrepreneurship centers, which are located in more remote areas of our country. which seek to support MSMEs. And lastly, we have the area of tax benefits, which you see on the right. And under this topic, the government creates tax benefits for the smallest companies to have much more access to different tax breaks that we offer in exchange for scientific and investment in science and innovation. We can go on to the next slide, please. Great, this shows what our targets are. Our goal is to establish coordination with at least 4,200 institutions over the course of this presidential term. If we go to the next slide, I'll tell you more about that. Currently, we have 7,700 companies who have signed up for this program, which involves carrying out a self-diagnostic assessment. Many of these are MSMEs, which is an important part of this area. This allows us to create a path for businesses to innovate further. Next slide, please. As I said, we have reached 71% of the departments in Colombia. Let's jump to the next slide. More recently, we've been working collaboratively in order to connect with universities as part of our innovation strategy for MSMEs. Next slide, please. Let's jump to the next one. Here we can offer some more specific information. We have 1,100 new organizations coordinating with innovation packs. There are 410 companies that have developed innovation management skills. Next slide, please. As I was saying, we work in the area of intellectual property and technology transfers. And the goal of this is to make sure that innovations that come out of higher institution bodies can also get support and become official. Next slide, please. And this leads us to other specific initiatives which have been created, such as this initiative called Get Your Patent. What we've tried to do with this is ensure that intellectual property can be properly used and protected. We are wrapping up a prior version of this program, which has allowed many businesses in our company to acquire patents. Then moving on to tax benefits, which is something we try to incentivize through our Ministry of Technology, Science, and Innovation. We have a program specifically for SMEs, and the goal is to get these businesses to invest more in science and innovation projects. Essentially, by doing this, they can qualify for different kinds of tax deductions. We've seen significant growth in SMEs, and they are applying for more and more benefits. I just wanted to show you briefly that this is the evolution we've had in our program. More specifically, in 2020, 136 MSMEs invested 169 billion pesos, Colombian pesos, in investment. So this is what we've been doing in the area of innovation to be able to assist our MSMEs. We have several challenges that we face. We are going to seek to keep working in this area and overcome these different challenges that we face. That's all we have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferro, for sharing Colombia's initiatives to assist micro, small, and medium enterprises. Our next speaker is Mr. Alberto Majo, Advisor to the Ministry and Head of the National Directorate of Innovation, Science and Technology of the Ministry of Education and Culture of Uruguay. Mr. Majo will share Uruguay's good practices on science and technology to build resiliency in the framework of sustainable development and COVID-19 recovery. Welcome, Mr. Majo. You have the floor.
Bueno, muy bueno.
Hello, good morning to all. Representatives from Jamaica, the Uruguayan representative in Washington, D.C., greetings. Essentially, I would like to talk about the impacts that the pandemic has had on our countries, as well as the challenges that we are facing as we approach the post-pandemic period in the area of science, technology, and innovation. The first thing I wanted to highlight is the extent to which the pandemic has had an impact on our society. Surely we've seen this in all societies across the hemisphere, but I want to focus on Uruguay's experience. We'll talk about the impacts on our society, the impacts on the social security system, on the healthcare system, and on the scientific community, as well as the impacts on how our economy is managed and the relationship between science and the government. I wanted to start off by mentioning a few aspects that we had to address in order to develop specific strategies to combat the pandemic and put an end to the pandemic. First and foremost, we have a very important issue to take into account, which is that Uruguay adopted a responsible strategy, as we call it. The goal is to take advantage of the civic culture that we have in Uruguay to help us communicate better with society so that the general public can be well aware of the actions that are being taken to fight the pandemic. With that in mind, the government adopted a strategy that involved receiving advice from the scientific community in Uruguay. We created an honorary scientific community which had a group of experts from different fields in science and mathematics. This committee allowed us to receive timely information and improve our knowledge of the pandemic and take a different approach to fighting it. The idea was to establish a dialogue between the scientific community and the decision-making or policy-making bodies. That was an important strategy that was undertaken in Uruguay. And it allowed us to think of new models that could work for the future. In terms of education, at the earliest stage of the pandemic, everybody had to go home, and this created great stress on the education system. However, Uruguay has a particular plan that is focused on improving connectivity at schools and access to laptops for students in the Uruguayan system. So schools were able to take advantage of that plan that was already in place. Schools had to reorganize their efforts, develop platforms, and acquire software and use innovation so that teachers and families could remain connected to the education system from their homes. That is, so that they could make the transition from going to school in person to working from home. As a result of that, 100% of the teachers in Uruguay were able to connect with their students and the families. And more than 80% of our students were able to do the same. This meant that as we started getting back to in-person classes in Uruguay, and we have a strategy for that as well, we could operate a mixed system between virtual and in-person learning. And as a result of this, the pandemic didn't have as large an impact on the education system. So that was one innovation we really wanted to highlight. The second important thing to focus on is that Uruguay has a relatively small scientific community, but it is quite connected and is involved in international networks in life sciences and healthcare in particular. That allowed us to remain in contact with the scientific community so that we could address the pandemic together. The same thing applies with the healthcare system. We have a healthcare system that is relatively accessible to the population, and we had to modify it so that the healthcare system could continue to treat people. In addition to everything we've said, we also saw a large mobilization when it came to cooperation in the area of technology. For example, information and communications technology companies developed an app that could allow all people to have a system on their mobile phones so that they could schedule their vaccine appointments and then get digital certificates. It also allows us to track the Uruguayan vaccination system in real time when it comes to the first, second, and third doses. As I said at the beginning, another important point of this is the response given by Uruguayan society to the government's recommendations and the vaccination program. Though the vaccination program is voluntarily, more than 55% of the population has received 2 doses. More than 40% of the population has received 3 doses. And the Uruguayan government has approved a vaccination program for children under the age of 12 that will see them get vaccinated over the next few months. We also have vaccines available for people who want to come visit Uruguay and get vaccinated while they're here. All of this had a big impact, and maybe we should add another thing to this, which is something that's allowing us to maintain Uruguay's financial system. On the one hand, we've been able to keep our economy structured, but in addition to that, we've developed a coronavirus fund to help us address everything related to the social impacts of the pandemic and provide assistance to vulnerable populations, offer vaccines, everything like that. That has allowed us to offer greater transparency in public finances, as we currently see an economic recovery with very promising indicators. Now, I'll talk about some of the challenges that we face in Uruguay when it comes to science, technology, and innovation as we work to improve over the next few years. First and foremost, we need to take advantage of the achievements that we have seen over the course of many years of creating programs and institutions, as well as specific agencies to promote technological innovation and science in Uruguay. However, right now, we are undertaking a process that involves reorganizing our scientific and technological system in Uruguay. We're looking at governance, and we're trying to have information-based governance. We're observing, or we're trying to determine what the main bottlenecks are in Uruguayan society. And one of the main bottlenecks that we see in Uruguay involves the fact that we need to increase investment in science, technology, and innovation. And we're seeing a lack of financing in the private sector and for scientific and technological innovation in that sector. More than 80% of the funds that go to this area comes from the national government and goes to universities. So we have a big challenge that we face in that area. To address this challenge, we need to boost the scientific community in different areas of knowledge. We need to strengthen engineering in the country. And at the same time, we need to improve our business climate so that this can happen. We need to see a general reorganization of our system with a science and technological system. We need to address two main bottlenecks. We need to offer a better business climate and create further ties between the academic sector and the business sector. We need to attract investments, open up to the world. We need to continue improving our infrastructure overall and our scientific and technological infrastructure. And we need to continue to cooperate internationally on science and technology. As the pandemic has shown us, international cooperation is the basis for science and open innovation to create better opportunities for all of our countries. So that's just a general overview of the strategy that we're using to help our economy recover in Uruguay and to strengthen our science and technological climate through lessons learned. Thank you very much.
Pablo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mejo, for your presentation and for sharing your government's mitigation strategies adopted in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. And please offer the floor to Dr. Janero Rodriguez Martinez, Vice Minister of Science, Technology, Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology of the Dominican Republic. Vice Minister Rodriguez, welcome. You have the floor.
Let's give him 10 seconds, Minister. He has a slow internet connection.
Pregunto si me escuchan.
Can you hear me? I just wanted to ask if you could hear me. Yes, sir, we can. Thank you. Mr. Chair, distinguished secretary, authorities of the organization of this sixth meeting of ministers and high authorities of science and technology. Thank you, distinguished representatives of the countries of the region participating at this important meeting. Good morning. The Ministry of Science, Technology, and Higher Education of the Dominican Republic is honored to be present at the 6th meeting of ministers and high authorities of science and technology. It's an event that we are certain we will be more edified as a result with uh, with greater ideas and partnerships to foster science and technology from our countries and multiply them throughout the region. And this is what this is all about. Science and technology should be used to increase resilience for sustainable development and to recover from COVID-19. Regarding that, we'd like to mention that MESCIT from the Dominican Republic is composed of 32 universities, 10 specialized institutions, 5 technical institutes, and together they all enroll 600,000 students. These students are taught by a faculty composed of 19,200 professors. The national system is decisively focused on encouraging research on and has many graduate programs to increase students' professional career or to extend students' professional careers. And we have and endeavors to graduate students in higher technological fields. One goal we have is to increase the funds that we have aimed at research in the Dominican Republic. Now, we have strengthened these areas as a result of the different efforts made made by the President of the Dominican Republic, Luis Avila Corona, and the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, Dr. Franklin Garcia. A quality science, technology, and education program depends on technology in all realms, technology, economics, social. So it's important to emphasize that the pandemic that we're experiencing are teaching us many lessons. It's taught us that if technology wouldn't have been harnessed and that many productive projects wouldn't have been able to provide, or it wouldn't have provided continuity to many important projects. As a result of lockdown, cyberspace became our social outlet, and as a result, the country experienced a digital transformation. And I do not feel that we have really suffered as a result of digital lockdown. We feel that that is a bit more strengthened in our country. E-trade opened up a new scenario in our country, as well as virtual education, despite the many inconveniences that we were able to overcome. We're truly convinced that after overcoming the pandemic, technological transformation will continue to expand and develop in order to provide many benefits from the member countries of the OAS. At the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Higher Education, we will follow and will endeavor to comply the objectives of REMSIT to be able to correctly and effectively use ICTs and technology resources to help development, with the understanding that it's a fact, it's a truth that Latin America is facing. It is lagging behind and should endeavor to, one, execute an innovation agenda, strengthen telecommunications, promote gender equality and leadership of women aimed at entrepreneurships and especially STEM fields, and increase science leadership and or female incursion in science and technology, engineering, and math. Furthermore, we should contribute and look at best practices throughout the region just to see how different ideas have developed and use them to solve many of our problems in the region. We need to create a network of partners, solutions, and establish a mentorship for diasporas within universities and public sectors and foster technology innovation to be able to close any digital gaps and transform society. This is a big challenge we must face, but it's an urgent one. Having said this, the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, and Technology of the Dominican Republic will endeavor to support quantum research, robotics, research on big data, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. MISIP has a science, technology, and humanistic and social web portal, and professors, students, and faculty of the institutions that compose the higher education system in the Dominican Republic can access this website freely. They can access important databases and bibliographic references for their research. All of this, in addition to the different programs, educational programs, training programs offered to higher education faculty and their students, as well as an award for academic or awards and scholarships offered to both faculty and students based on merit. So the Dominican Republic is deeply rooted in these types of policies. It supports the IES, the higher education. It supports higher education with seed fund, with scholarships and grants for research. As a result of these important projects that are executed, we expect to exchange projects and ideas with the OAS that will contribute to strengthen the MISIT of the Dominican Republic, with the aim of ensuring that science, technology, and innovation is a protagonist and essential to promoting more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable societies within our hemisphere. And as a result, effectively contribute to the sustainable development of our country and our region. Distinguished chair and participants and authorities committed to this important meeting, or to the organizing this important meeting, we do thank you once again for inviting us. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister Rodriguez, for sharing the Dominican Republic's experience. I now offer the floor to any delegation that wishes to comment on the presentations made during this plenary session. Let me remind you that interventions from delegations should not exceed 3 minutes. We have. Venezuela, you have the floor.
Delegado de Venezuela, ¿se puede encender su cámara y su micrófono, por favor?
Asking the delegate of Venezuela to turn on his mic and microphone.
Thank you for this opportunity to share some of our ideas and concerns. Good morning, delegates. Muito obrigado a todos vocês que estão aqui hoje e compartam seus esforços por um mundo melhor. Hablar de resiliência.
Good morning, delegates, and I do share your wishes for a better world. We cannot speak about technology if we don't speak about climate change, natural disasters, and migrant movements, diasporas. The situation of many countries in the region prevent proper development, and countries can enter a prolonged period, where they won't recover sustainability. They lose resilience and are commonly called resilience traps, which are hard to exit. Haiti, for example, is aware of a situation which has impacted them when they began to overcome the natural disasters. They were hit by a hurricane and then another earthquake. The life became even more difficult for them. And the people that suffer the most as a result of natural disasters are the poor, the most vulnerable. And before it's catastrophe after catastrophe, poverty is the worst vulnerability amidst threats. It's a disaster in itself that worsens with natural or biological disasters.
The sea level rise. In addition, research is beginning to verify that climate change is associated with the increase of the intensity of hurricanes. So we're going to have stronger hurricanes as the climate change continues. Stronger actions must be taken to reduce the emissions and to reduce the impact of climate change and natural hazards. Science and technology have a lot to do with this. Adicionalmente, el cambio climático y los
In addition, climate change and disasters lead to diasporas. A report in October 2021 from the White House emphasizes this.
Which may drive conflict directly, as well as induce migration of populations in vulnerable situations, attempting to secure safety or livelihoods elsewhere. Extreme events and conflicts are the top of two drivers that force displacement globally, together responsibly for the annual movement of nearly 30 million people from their homes. Y la tecnología tiene que ser herramienta de reducción de los riesgos y mejora de la calidad de vida.
Technology must reduce risk and improve livelihoods. All the tools that allow us to reduce risks promoted by droughts, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes are required, or require technology. The United States HAZUS program or tool allows risk to be planned or plans for risk and response. Other tools are available. The use of these types of tools depend on local data, but that is scarce, and this is an opportunity to be able to leverage on these technology tools necessary for planning for natural disasters. More cooperation is required, important and urgent, and to accelerate transfer technology in these areas. in order to address migrants and diasporas, technology must be used to help these impoverished and vulnerable population groups. Information technology allows processes for localization, saving credentials. So migrants migrating in mass groups will be able to enter society in the recipient country.
Bien, un tema para incorporar en las discusiones futuras.
We hope that this will also be a topic to be addressed by this group. Mobilization of migrants leads to high magnitude or large magnitude humanitarian issues, trafficking of persons, commercial exploitation, sexual exploitation, and these are violations of the most fundamental human rights. And human rights is one of the main raison d'etre of this institution that is providing us this opportunity to speak and organize ourselves, the OAS. So we need to address talent and diasporas and individuals leaving each of our countries are talented and they have to be analyzed. It's important to look at the strategies of each country. It's important, but it's very important to also address the truths that we face. We have to address our own deficiencies and the difficulties that we face, not only speak about political discourses. This is an opportunity to truly help each other. Disasters or natural disasters have no borders, races, or languages, nor does technology. So let's make cooperation overcome ideological and political differences and help our populations. That should be our mission. Thank you, all of you.
Unusual. E muito obrigado também aos irmãos brasileiros. Now,
thank you so much, Brazilian brothers. We will not forget you.
Thank you very much, Venezuela. Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Costa Rica celebrates the efforts presented by delegations of Belize, Ecuador, Honduras, Colombia, Uruguay, and the Dominican Republic. And with regards to the participation of MSMEs and technology transfer in the region, Costa Rica would like to share its experience, in this realm and its public policies that are pertinent to this. The Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, MISIT, has a plan that stems from 2020 through 2027 and has various strategies in place to promote knowledge and transformative knowledge that is within MSMEs. This includes promoting in more innovative financing options based on the needs of the different stakeholders that are part of the economic ecosystem. Also, inclusion of scientific insight and technology, knowledge of technology and development. We also promote skills development in technology, and this includes strengthening our innovative managers program. We also promote communications and support for the productive sector and link them with universities, incubators, and acceleration centers and research centers as well. Another item that we wanted to emphasize that Costa Rica fosters is life sciences, manufacturing of medical devices specifically, which are strategic areas for our country. And the president stated a decree where Costa Rica endeavors to be a hub for these types of production efforts. So we had to change our governance for clinical trials as a result, and best manufacturing practices and regulations for genetic research and databases. and access of research data funded by public funds, and ensure the quality of molecular research and preclinical trials as well. So Costa Rica has also worked arduously in creating and proposing or establishing support institutions to work with the private sector. It created the Research Promotional Agency, the Costa Rican Space Agency, and the Transnational Digital Agency. So Costa Rica recently approved a regulation to organize the org charts within these institutions, with harmonizes efforts. So the MISIT is willing to offer their expertise to any of the countries in the organization to exchange experiences, to coordinate meetings, or any type of coordination action that will allow the region to move forward together in this endeavor. Thank you.
Nobody else has requested the floor.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your participation. I suggest taking note of the presentations from this plenary session and to move on to the next plenary session. There being no objection, it is so decided. We now begin the 5th plenary session under the theme Effective Public-Private Academia Collaboration to Enhance Competitiveness and Quality of Life. During this session, delegations are invited to provide examples of approaches to increase the social and economic development of their communities while reducing the digital divide through enhanced collaboration between governments, the private sector, academia, and civil society. After the presentations from member states, we will hear from COMSIT, partners from academia and the private sector who will share with us examples of such collaboration. I am pleased to offer the floor to Ms. Ana Chan, National Secretary of Science, Technology and Innovation of Guatemala, to present on good practices and fruitful partnerships in Guatemala. Secretary Chan, thank you for joining us today. You have the floor.
Just giving directions for requesting the floor. Ready, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Great. Thanks so much for this opportunity. It's a great honor to be able to be part of the 6th meeting of Ministers and High Authorities of Science and Technology, REMSIT, as National Secretary of Science and Technology and Innovation in Guatemala. We endeavor to promote science activities on national level and coordinate science and technology projects with the business and academic sectors of Guatemala. And the objective is to improve the quality of life of Guatemalans. We're convinced at Senacit that scientific research and scientific transfer has a positive impact on sustainable development of the country through an increase of competitiveness, productive competitiveness, and leveraging of new technologies, and It also provides opportunities to have have workers that are more skilled and prepared. We have national development programs for that, or training programs for that, and offer opportunities for training within Guatemala through scholarships at a national and international level. We also believe that it's important to work together with other institutions, other government institutions, to promote development in our countries through common synergies and through entrepreneurship opportunities. So we've worked with South Korea and Israel, for example, in order to collaborate with the public sector and academia, and it's called a triple helix. It's a virtual cycle or virtuous cycle to promote competitiveness. It works with the government, academia, and the private sector. And we're now working on a fifth helix and continuing with our international cooperation efforts. And an important contribution of this partnership was signing a document on February of 2021, and 22 national and international institutions committed to being part of this partnership, CTI. And it endeavors to foster science and technology in Guatemala through coordination of efforts with academia, civil society, and productive sectors, and working together with international peers in order to coordinate in an intersectoral manner. So we work together with key stakeholders at a national level and involve them by creating synergies and working with the supply and demand of science and technology and resolve national problems. We also encourage developing skills, science and technology related skills. And we know that only based on quality and inclusive education for children and adolescents will be able to ensure sustainable development by closing these inequality gaps and strengthening technology within at universities, graduate and undergraduate and graduate levels, as is established by our national policy for scientific development. We need to improving research through interdisciplinary projects that allow development of projects that have greater social and economic impact. We also support the creation, operation, and growth of companies and startups in science and technology by fostering technology transfer among productive public and private sectors and improving competitiveness in the country, and as a result, attaining better economic, better insight and economic benefits. So through innovation, science, and technology, and looking into ancestral knowledge as well, and linking that, we hope that the entire population will have access to this in an equitable manner. We have sectoral commissions for science and technology, and specific commissions for implementing, monitoring, or follow-up of national scientific development policies by working together and reviewing different implementation plans. So we also impact or attempt to impact funds aimed at innovation and development, promotion of intellectual property for scientific developers based on our applicable policies, and making sure that there is a yearly allotment or a yearly budget that is assigned to this for this effort. We also participate actively in recording information for research done at a governmental level for science and technology. So Guatemala's Senacit is conducting a technology transfer pilot program with the Chamber of Industry at Guatemala and 2 private universities in Guatemala. And this project, included being able to share skills, the university shared development skills or training, and the private sector shared their needs, and the universities responded. So as a result, we were able to leverage on science and technology and truly provide an example for an example is science and open science implementation in the public and private sector is feasible and has positive impact as a result to the social development of the country. The Secretariat will continue to foster such examples, such efforts to be able to use science and technology to benefit society. And I'm truly fascinated and by this important meeting and with all the speakers, and hope that it will benefit science and technology throughout the region. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Secretary Chan, for your very informative presentation and for sharing Guatemala's experience. I'm pleased to invite Mr. Alberto Vegaza, Director of Business Innovations of the National Secretary of Science, Technology, and Innovation of Panama, to make his presentation. You have the floor. Panama.
Good morning. Greetings to all the delegates from our sister countries that are participating in the 6th meeting of Ministers and High Authorities of Science and Technology. On behalf of the National Secretariat of Science, Technology, and Innovation of Panama, we express thanks for this invitation and the opportunity to speak to you today. And the speaker is cutting out, but the interpreter will do what he can. To improve competitiveness and the quality of life of all of our citizens, we should work through collaboration amongst the public and private sectors, as well as academia. Out of this collaboration, we see important solutions that improve society as a whole. In Panama, starting in 2006, we have been performing this kind of collaboration, and we work particularly through our National Competitiveness Center to do this. We also have our National Forum for Competitiveness. At these forums, stakeholders reach consensus based on dialogue. This allows them to identify bottlenecks that limit competitiveness in the country. These forums also issue specific agreed on recommendations. And we hope that these can be used to overcome bottlenecks successfully. At a recent edition of the National Forum for Competitiveness, the main topic addressed was strengthening and implementing digital infrastructure in Panama. And this is an essential component to increase productivity in the country during the current health crisis. By incorporating digitalization as a factor for resilience, we have been able to make improvements. through conversations between the public and private sector and academia at this forum, a group spoke about the need for the country to move forward towards a digital economy. It was said that the country should further develop the skills and qualifications of our population in information and communications technologies. It was also said that we need to implement high-tech, cutting-edge infrastructure. We also need to establish public policies that are appropriate for the country's current reality, and the goal of that would be to modernize and digitalize processes at government entities, in this way facilitating access for the general public and the country's different sectors and business segments. With this, the goal is to improve the quality of life of all of the Panamanian people and to enhance the telecommunication services offered across the region. This collaboration between the public and private sectors and academia helps to identify, propose, and implement tools that allow all Panamanians to have better solutions to situations that may arise by harnessing the power of Revolution 4.0. Supporting and promoting the productive sector for it to implement innovation and to restructure current processes is key. This will allow it to reduce costs and increase revenue while creating more jobs. We should also say that in Panama, we have a national strategic plan, which is a document that was agreed upon by various sectors in the country. This document fosters collaboration between the public and private sectors and academia, and sets out a national level policy to eradicate poverty and inequality. To do this, it relies on science, technology, and innovation. This requires the engagement of regional competitiveness centers, since these centers foster innovation and promote greater collaboration in the economy. We should promote value chains and support gender parity as well to reduce the economic gender gap in the business sector and to improve the quality of life of all of our citizens in an equitable manner. Public-private academic collaboration, if well structured, can help attract investment over the long term, which will lead to important economic developments for the country. This collaboration ultimately promotes development as well as new innovation and technical developments, just to mention some of its advantages. To conclude, I will also say that the close relationship between the public and private sectors and academia helps offer better human resources with higher education levels, fosters competitiveness in the country, and promotes agile governance for efficient and inclusive processes. It further promotes investment by the public sector in priority areas, which require solutions quickly while offering a climate of security for private investors. I thank you all for your attention and have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Casa, for your insightful presentation. I'm pleased to welcome our concept partners to share their important perspectives. Our first speaker is Dr. Ignacio de Leon, President of the Coastal National Law Center at Arizona State University and blockchain expert. Welcome, Dr. De Leon. You have the floor.
Buenos días, ¿me pueden escuchar?
Good morning, can you hear me? Yes, sir, we can. Good morning to all. Before I start, I would like to express my gratitude to the OAS for inviting me to speak at this 6th meeting of ministers and high authorities of science and technology. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you today, and I would like to say that on behalf of the Sochik Center for Law Studies that I'm here representing, I would like to have an interesting discussion about technological trends that may impact the public and private sectors as well as academia. The title of my presentation is The Impact of Blockchain Technology on Innovation Public Policies. I think that this is a very important area that is already having an impact in Latin America and the Caribbean and beyond. And it will only become more important in the future. Can you see my presentation on the screen? Please confirm. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see the presentation?
Okay, let me try that. En este momento.
Perfecto.
Ahora
sí.
sí.
Sí, ahora sí.
Muy bien.
So, first we have to contextualize this problem. Why is blockchain a transformative technology? Taking into account social relations, and why does blockchain have an impact on legal regulations? And with that, how will our public policies have to be structured to respond to this? And there are 3 key answers to this. First of all, blockchain changes the way that information is shared across digital networks. We have a system that, and the interpreter appears to have lost the speaker.
We lost them.
Hopefully he can reconnect, I think.
Yes, let's wait.
Can we get back Dr. DeLeon, or should we move on to the next presentation and hopefully he'll come back on?
I think he is probably trying to reconnect, Minister. Can we give him just a few seconds?
Okay.
Minister, he's having some difficulty reconnecting, so we can move on to the next speaker and have him connect afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, can we then offer the floor to Mr. Yared Al-Shin, Director of Innovation of the Biomimicry Institute, who will present on the nature-inspired innovations and collaboration opportunities in this sector. Mr. Shane, welcome. You have the floor.
Fantastic. Thank you. Can you hear me okay and see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, first, thank you all so much for inviting me to speak with you here today. I'm excited to share with you about biomimicry and more broadly, nature-based solutions. And let's dive in. During this presentation, I will introduce you to biomimicry. I will share some case studies, and finally, I'll share some highlights that I've learned by working with hundreds of rapidly scaling startup companies from around the world. But before I begin, I just wanted to introduce our organization. So we are a US-based nonprofit that was founded in 2006 by the distinguished Janine Benyus. She's a science writer and environmentalist. And we focus on three key initiatives at the Biomimicry Institute. We focus on science education, where we create curriculum and tool sets for students and educators in kindergarten through 12th grade. We focus on science communication and working with both our internal tools, such as Ask Nature, and also mainstream media to make sure that we have a science literate audience and science literate society. And then we also focus on science innovation, and this is what I'll be speaking to you about, where we help bring biology research and other biological science research out of the lab and into industry. But before I begin, I just wanted to share this picture because I think that this really highlights what we can learn from nature. When you first look at this, I always think of a braided cable or cord, maybe something for a utility grid. But in actuality, this is a close-up picture of a peacock feather. And I show this because there's so much we can learn from how that feather is oriented and twisted, to the coloring of that feather, to even how that was produced and made via cells in the first place. And at its premise, this is what biomimicry is. It's not only learning about nature, but it's really learning from nature. Nature has been around, from what we know, for about 3.8 billion years on planet Earth, going through all kinds of evolutionary change. And that is quite a lot of research and development. That's 3.8 years of research and development, 3.8 billion years of research and development that we can learn from. And this is our goal. How can we take these evolutionary strategies that exist and have existed and bring them into our human-built environment to solve some big sustainability and economic challenges? And at the same time, we like to say that a sustainable world already exists. We, of course, all know, following COP26 and IPCC reports, this needs to be top of mind for every country. And we like to say that a sustainable world already exists. Plants and animals and ecosystems in nature grow and shrink, and then those materials are broken down via decomposers like fungi and reconverted into new things. How can we learn from that process of nutrient cycling? That's a key aspect of biomimicry. And this isn't only sustainability that this impacts. There's also tremendous economic value here. Just this year, the Boston Consulting Group released a report stating that there'll be more than $30 trillion, that's US dollars, of economic activity in this space over the next 30 years, with the World Economic Forum saying there's going to be 400 million jobs in this space by the year 2030. So this is happening. It's happening quickly. It's happening now. And my hope is that I can share with you some case studies and examples to inspire you about how you might be able to bring this into your own constituents and to your own countries. So before I share two case studies, I just wanted to mention that biomimicry is found throughout industry and technology sectors. Just this past year, I worked with startups that are creating new bio-inspired textiles, creating new types of sanitation that allow us to be off-grid, but also ways to view sanitation as a positive input that we can take advantage of,
as well as new agricultural inputs and outputs. I won't be focusing on any of those specific technology sectors, but I would be more than happy to answer questions or share more information about that later. But the first case study I wanted to share with you is is an Israeli startup called eConcrete. This is a quickly growing company. In this past year, they've doubled in size from 16 to 33 staff, and they are quite literally bringing concrete to life. And before I share about their technology and what's allowed them to get to this point, I wanted to first share some information about the problems. So it was already mentioned earlier today about climate change, sea level rise, extreme weather events. And in response, we're building a lot of, humans are building a lot of coastal protection. Actually, 70% of all marine infrastructure projects and coastal protection projects are made out of concrete, and nearly all of these new infrastructure projects are dead. They're creating dead zones in the water. And this actually further exacerbates the problem. It's a short-term fix, but long-term, it will lead to more harm. And that's because this creates poor water quality. It invites invasive species to live on your shoreline and, of course, decreases biodiversity, which is bad for tourism, but also keeps these coastlines from being resilient. So this company was started by two marine biologists that were studying these dead zones. And what they realized was that this is a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place. They're marine biologists. What they saw was habitats that were being put into the water that did not sustain life. So by making three small tweaks to the formula of the concrete, to the microstructures, as you can see here, and then to these macrostructures to more closely mimic and resemble what is already found in nature, they were able to create a product that exceeded coastal construction standards and helped support native ecosystems. So here are some examples of their products out in the wild, as we like to say. And you can see this vibrant marine growth that's occurring. And I share this because not only are they able to meet those construction standards, but they're able to have all these other positive impacts as well. It increases water quality. It serves as a carbon sink. And I think most importantly, because of this long-term thinking of attracting life instead of repelling life, their structures actually get stronger over time. As marine organisms build on top of them, they strengthen and get stronger, which reduces the amount of maintenance needed and eventually will slow down, if not eliminate, the need to replace these structures into the future. As I mentioned, they're quickly growing. They are a lead in the Trans-Adriatic pipeline in Europe. They have installations in ports and some of the biggest ports in the world. And they also are doing a lot of work with offshore wind at the moment. And I just connected with the founder of the company earlier this week, and he shared 4 things that allowed them to get to this point. And I'm sharing them with you as perhaps a way to spark some ideas on how you can bring this into some of your technology transfer initiatives. So first is the founders were marine biologists that started a concrete company. It usually doesn't work that way, but this allowed them to have that reputation and recognition needed to attract players in this space. And actually they've been able to secure some of those projects listed above because their research work was cited as standards for new construction projects. So they established their credibility by being researchers first. Of course, they had to meet current construction standards. That's to be expected. But the big one was that environmental policy regulations allowed them to compete economically. So instead of having to implement a new marine technology and then come and do remediation work afterwards, their environmentally sensitive technologies already meet those policy regulations. And this was key so that they could compete with these billion-dollar companies that are in this space currently. And of course, they had this long-term view of working with nature, not against it. Nature is going to continue to exist and thrive. How can we work with it and make sure that it serves both humans and our environment? So I have one more example to share, and I'm going to switch gears and talk about paint, and in particular, paint inspired by this beautiful butterfly, the Cypress morpho butterfly, which is found all throughout rainforests in Central and South America. And what makes this butterfly unique is that vibrant blue color is not caused by pigments or dyes. It's caused by a reflection of light. It's reflecting back blue wavelengths of light. So researchers were studying this and realized that they could synthesize a paint without that need for pigments, which can decrease the cost of paint, but it also really has some environmental impacts and economic impacts as well. Most of our pigments and dyes are extracted from mines like this. So this is a titanium mine for titanium dioxide. That market size is $22 billion. And that's just for one white pigment. So here, just as an example, is their paint in action. I share this so you can really grasp what they're working on. You can see in the video, they spray on the paint, and then over a period of a few minutes, it self-assembles to start reflecting back blue wavelengths of light. Again, this was inspired by that Cypress morpho butterfly, and there's several other companies working in this same space called structural color. And I also share this because this species is native and indigenous to these tropical forests all throughout Latin America. And this is just one example of a new type of technology taking on billion-dollar industries. So my question that we have and explore at the Biomimicry Institute is, what if we value these biodiverse ecosystems not only as natural resources and as carbon sinks, but as new sources of innovation to really take it on these billion-dollar industries and affect upwards of $30 trillion of economic growth. What we found by working in this space and working with innovators is that there's quite a lot of support, and I've heard some earlier mention of this support on the call from government and universities, and then once it's ready to grow and scale in the private sector. But there's a missing gap here. And this gap is really pressing, especially for these new materials and infrastructure type projects. So our intervention is to provide founder-friendly capital and funding, as well as support so that these companies can find proof of pilot projects and community partners to bring their solutions to market. So to wrap up my call here, and again, thank you so much for inviting us to chat with you today. I have 3 points I'd love for you to take away. The first is that we need long-term thinking to learn from nature, not fight against nature. And this includes thinking about how we may encourage more university spinouts from biological sciences to bring their work out of the lab and into reality. We also need policy interventions to allow for some of these early stage companies to compete with existing entrenched industries. This is a huge industry. $30 trillion of economic activity is going to happen here. So I think this should be on everyone's radar and agenda. And finally, we need to combat climate change and make sure that we live in a sustainable world. And we think that biomimicry is a way that we can do that. So again, thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shane, for your eye-opening presentation. I think we have Dr. DeLeon back on, so we'll ask him to continue his presentation. You have the floor.
Sorry about that interruption. Murphy's Law dictates that if the circumstances are going to be inconvenient, it will happen at the most inconvenient time possible. I was telling you about the impact of blockchain on public innovation policies. And I was starting off my presentation by explaining what the reasons are that, in this case, this technology is so transformative. Before I got cut off, I was just talking about the fact that digital information has been transmitted over networks basically since the creation of the internet up to the present day, essentially through centralized means. They transmit that information from one side of the network to another through validating entities that confirm that information rather by ensuring that the information is consistent with certain protocol, and once they can verify it, they allow it to be passed on to the destination. Naturally, that means of transmitting information is vulnerable to certain attacks, like attacks from hackers. And it makes it so that the trust that people place in the information is very limited. As a result of this, although the internet has been extremely valuable, it still hasn't reached the full potential that it could have. And that is where blockchain technology could be a very transformative technology. Blockchain transmits information in a decentralized manner through consensus by a majority of members or all members, depending on the protocol used. But in either case, consensus by the members of the network is essential to validate information and transmit it. That makes it very difficult for hackers to work because it's extremely costly for them to try to identify a point on that network and extract information from it. That's because since everything is consensus-based, the information is transmitted simultaneously to all of the parties that are on that network. And that makes it so that for any hacker to be successful, they have to be able to simultaneously attack all different points on the network where that information is, and that would be impossible. That's why blockchain will be transformative. It will, or it already is, changing the way that information is transmitted across digital networks. So then what would the impact of that be on public policies? I'll give you 3 scenarios here that I think are very interesting because they are illustrative of how transformative the implementation of blockchain is. In Guatemala, there's a very big conflict taking place, and it's about fabrics with indigenous Mayan designs. These fabrics are being used by designers abroad who aren't paying the developers of those designs. They're not paying them royalties, or they're not essentially paying them money as they should for that intellectual property. That property that has been developed by these indigenous people. In fact, recently a decision was issued by the Constitutional Court in Guatemala. This is from 2017, and the decision recognized those collective rights to indigenous intellectual property over these designs. However, many complaints are still being filed against violations of that right. So let's look at why that happens. It's because the system through which governments administer those rights to intellectual property in the international context, first of all, is very costly. It involves different governments. It's a system that works across different jurisdictions, so it's expensive because of that. Second of all, it's complicated because it's a fractured system, despite the fact that there are international standards on these regulations to some extent, but national organizations create their own procedures, and this means that any complaint that goes beyond international borders becomes complicated and costly. The process of filing a complaint and having it heard can take years, and not everybody has enough money to pay for that. The system is supposed to correct violations of intellectual property rights. Blockchain presents a radically different opportunity in the sense that it allows for a protocol system that is not corrective and instead preventive when it comes to these rights. Why are they preventive? They're preventive because this system allows these rights to become permanent, to become unchangeable, and to ensure that they are recognized by everybody who participates in the blockchain network. In this case, we'd be talking about a public blockchain network because there are different kinds of blockchain networks, some being private, some being public, some are semi-private. So this would be a public network. It would be a network that does not require permission. And by registering international property in the network, protection could be established much before any complaint has to be filed in a court due to an infraction of those rights. And in fact, at the exact time that the work is done with the current intellectual property registration system, several weeks go by, or a certain time goes by, before that work can actually be registered. So from the time the work is actually done until the time it can be registered in the intellectual property system, several weeks go by, and with blockchain it can essentially be done instantly. The way that this is done is by uploading a digital file. You can see an example of this on the upper left-hand side of the screen. You upload a digital file, and the file goes to a registration platform created for this purpose, and that platform encrypts the file. It registers it on the blockchain. That encryption is an alphanumeric code, and that means that the registration exists in the cloud, and it's protected by a public key and a private key. And the private key is handed to the owner or owners of that right. And finally, a certificate is created, which allows any person to verify that the person who registered the product is in fact the holder of the private key. And that gives them preference to exercise that intellectual property. Obviously, authorities have to investigate the quality of the creation of that product, just as you would see with patents, for example. But if we look at copyrights, for example, it's very important to see who has registered copyrights before. That kind of evidence can be very important, and it can avoid many conflicts, because it clarifies the issue of who the property actually belongs to, and it confirms the date on which property was registered. So that would be one case. We're also looking at a different case at the center that I preside over. we're working alongside a Mexican storage institute, and we're looking at a case related to the storage of goods. Agricultural commodities have to be appropriately balanced and measured and verified. And then once these agricultural products are stored in warehouses awaiting export, the agricultural commodities can be registered in a blockchain, which would be used to create a certificate, and that certificate could be given to banks in order to request loans against those products as collateral. Right now, it's very difficult to do this. It's very difficult for farmers to request loans against their agricultural commodities. And the reason for that is that their information isn't registered in entirely secure, protected files. So banks cannot be sure about the actual value of their commodities. However, with blockchain, you have the producers, the certifiers, the appraisers, and the warehouses themselves who can all attest to the quality and conditions of the agricultural commodities that are in that warehouse. And based on that, banks can use this blockchain technology in order to have greater confidence in that information, and they can issue loans against those products, and this would allow for export. We're also working on another case. We started with this when I was at the Inter-American Development Bank in 2007, and this has to do with blockchain as well. In fact, this was the first time I had the opportunity to participate in a use case, and in this case it was about trading music. It involves Caribbean artists. What the bank did was work with Berklee College of Music in order to develop a protocol to select artists or musicians from Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. They selected these artists, and then they sent them to work for 8 weeks at the Berklee College of Music, where they got together with specialized programmers, and they developed specific applications to resolve issues related to selling music. As a result of this experience, several applications were created. And they just did this through beta testing. But based on these beta applications, they were able to seek investment from different sources. They created solutions for the payment of royalties for music created by mixing several songs together. And they were able to proportionally remunerate the composers of all of the different songs that were used in that mix. They were also able to offer royalties for videos, that is, music videos for these different songs that were created from a mixture of other songs. And I won't go into further detail about that, but I just wanted to show you that blockchain there also had a use, and today there are several platforms that do this on a routine basis. In fact, Spotify just acquired another company that works with blockchain specifically because they see the potential that this has in the future.
Lastly, I wanted to also comment on the MSMEs market. It's NFT markets, which is well, blockchain is a bit more advanced and uses programming for smart contracts, and it protects the integrity of the asset that is being protected, the digital asset that is being protected, as opposed to cryptocurrency that aims at using them for trade and can be exchanged. But there's not, NFT means that it's a non-fungible token. You cannot execute it from a certificate of contract or an NFT for another. And as a result, collections that have not been placed digitally that had to be protected, as was art, for example, with regards to intellectual property, can do that through this type of technological device or tool, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, through marketplaces or dedicated markets for this type of product. It's been said that NFTs will be used as elements, fundamental elements for this virtual world, where virtual reality will interact with these blockchain outputs or products. There'll be assets with actual commercial value and will connect the real world, tangible world, with the virtual one. Yet, to be able to accelerate the adoption of this type of technology in Latin America and the Caribbean, what do governments need to do for that? I believe that there are 4 areas that we have to look at. First, legal regulations. This occurred in China in 2018, in Italy, in the United States. United States is passing laws to be able to use blockchain without any additional legal expertise required. So information within blockchain or blockchain data will be adapted to regular laws in place, yet an e-signature would be required for that. Data privacy laws will also have to be revamped in able to acknowledge the decentralized architecture of blockchain. Because laws right now, as they stand, require validation of internet information, internet data, and then it's distributed. However, decentralized data also is different, because different blockchain platforms exist and need to be interoperable for trade to be expanded instead of blocked. So securities emissions, for example. When NFTs are offered to an open public to sell horizontal properties or real estate through a virtual metaverse, that is going to lead to investments which are very similar to a public share issuance. But Latin America and the Caribbean aren't yet well ready or adapted to this type of emission or issuance. But laws have to be adjusted, internet architecture as well. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
I am now going to give our next speaker, Ms. Andrea Escobedo, Leader of Government and Regulatory Affairs at IBM Mexico, will represent on the work of IBM in transformative technologies as well as training opportunities in this area. Let me just remind our presenters that based on our time constraints, we ask that you limit your presentations to 5 to 6 minutes. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Ms. Escobedo.
Señor Escobedo, por favor, pudiera hacer un refresh en su pantalla, volver a solicitar la.
We're going to ask Mrs. Escobedo to refresh her screen. Mrs. Escobedo, if you can please exit the meeting and re-enter or refresh the screen.
Who tries to fix her technical issues. Your mic is off, Minister.
Hi, can you hear me now? Sorry. I'm terribly sorry. Technology sometimes doesn't help to achieve our goals. But it's an honor to join this conversation today with Minister. Couldn't hear that, but I believe that you said that I'm representing IBM. IBM is a company intensive in research and development, and we are part of the innovation system around the world. And we contribute to the development and prosperities of societies in which we operate. We believe in driving social impact by setting high standards for good tech. Thus, we join forces with academia, civil society, and governments to address the most pressing problems we face today. Those priorities that we wouldn't be able to solve on our own as isolated individuals, organizations, sectors, or even countries. It was very interesting what Dr. De Leon presented on blockchain. That is actually a collaborative technology that emerged as a response to the 2008 financial crisis and a crisis of trust of banks, making banks not necessary anymore as intermediaries. And blockchain has a vast potential for cultural or supply chain or initiatives with impact in communities. So it was really, really interesting. I want to present today a couple of examples of how IBM research team and resources are being provided to collaborate and to join forces to achieve these priorities. One of the examples, of course, is COVID and how IBM provided resources such as supercomputing power, virus tracking, and AI assistance to answer citizens' questions, which really helped to accelerate discoveries in the fight against COVID and for governments and policymakers and health personnel to attend the demands. Early on in the pandemic, IBM launched the COVID-19 High Performance Computing Consortium with partners across industry, academia, and government. This was based in the US, but really it was the global academic community and scientific community which participated. With the idea that to meet the global challenge of COVID-19, the world needed to come together. Then IBM offered supercomputing capability to accelerate research to the virus and the research effort to mitigate the pandemic and move on safely. Some examples included, for example, research on face mask and social distancing simulation, in which researchers concluded that wearing masks in combination with some degree of social distancing reduced the need for complete lockdown. This was very relevant for policy and decision makers to take the most important decisions that balanced the health, addressing the health challenges and economic challenges. And these simulations wouldn't have been possible years ago with this supercomputing power. Another interesting example is contact tracing and epidemiological modeling. Basic epidemiological modeling, but now with the power of geolocalization and contact tracing. Thanks to probabilistic model using advanced AI capabilities for COVID-19 transmission, using individual level contact tracing information. Researchers helped healthcare professionals to determine when it was appropriate to issue early warnings to people who have likely been exposed or infected by the virus through a contact tracing system, when in a moment when test was more expensive than it is now. An also important achievement was predicting the spreadability of variants. This research is still ongoing, and using again artificial intelligence, the research groups could discern in just a few hours whether a given COVID-19 variant was better or worse at binding to human cells than the original version of the virus. As new variants emerge, and now we are living with Omicron, the hope is that this model could help determine the course of action for public health organizations to take. These are just a few examples, and we could spend all morning talking about really important accomplishments from the research teams with the power of computing. We don't have we don't have the computer power in our minds to do these calculations. So this is why it's so important that tech pioneers as IBM collaborate with research specialists. And these examples of public-private academia collaboration prove the power of sharing best practices, producing and transferring knowledge, and creating value and knowledge chains. In addition to the pandemic collaboration effort, I also want to highlight our commitment to build a more sustainable and equitable future. It is increasingly clear that environmental goals are a crucial element to enhance competitiveness and quality of life at the same time. So our corporate responsibility approach includes a wide range of partnerships, collaborations, and engagements because we recognize that large societal challenges cannot be overcome by any single industry sector or public entity. These engagements often create opportunities for IBM's innovation and expertise to address critical challenges, from helping clients save energy and protecting the environment to creating a more sustainable food supply to, as I presented, assisting COVID-19 research with AI and supercomputing. On the commercial side, for example, IBM has recently announced an artificial intelligence-driven software for environmental intelligence, which helps business address sustainability objectives and climate risk. This combines weather, climate, and operational data and environmental performance management. IBM acquired some years ago the weather company. So that's why we have so many data on the environment, and we are really willing to put this in use in benefit of societies. And of course, this commercial version of what we can do is a result of years and years of collaboration and experimental practices and results with researchers and specialists. We have to remember that artificial intelligence is just collective intelligence. It's based on our collective intelligence that we have gathered a long time. And we truly believe that innovation is a collaborative process that requires diversity to flourish. Thus, we celebrate the Organization of American States' ongoing effort, collaborative effort to bridge the digital skills gap in the hemisphere, and we reiterate our commitment to collaborate. There's no doubt that the growing role of digital technologies in all industries and the ongoing pandemic has created employment uncertainty for aspiring and current professionals, particularly among underserved populations. As leaders of the tech sector, we recognize that the current skills offer and demand mismatch is associated with the speed of technological change and new ways of working, which represents a challenge for traditional education models, organizations, and individuals. And the way we used to talk about digital transformation and the future of work will never be the same. The future of work is now, and we are working with strategic partners around the world. We are certain that collaboration is key to address the urgent need to create new educational pathways for underserved communities. Thus, some of the ongoing partnerships focus on providing engagement, mentoring opportunities, and more support on the ground, with job placements assistance, particularly for marginalized populations, as well as measuring the increase on employability, creating data to inform public policy decisions. So we are seeing how the tech industry, and specifically IBM, is of course in the high end of research and advancing what we can do as humanity to address the more pressing problems we have, but also really attending as well the economic and social dynamics that are being challenged in part of because the technological change. In another occasion, I already talked about our free content on technology, continuous education content, but I want to present another example of how innovation can be used in benefit of the communities. And these are the example is the P-Tech schools, which are innovative model of public education that links high school with university and employment. Students graduate with a title recognized by the industry, which gives them the possibility to have practices and mentorships with specialists in the sector, with IBM specialists, and give them the possibility of an entry-level job or to pursue higher education. So P-Tech contributes to form the workforce for specialized positions that do not necessarily require a 5-year degree. And so far in our hemisphere, Canada, the US, Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina have adopted this new educational model. And we would like to see more P-Tech schools across the hemisphere. So the challenges we faced during and after the pandemic demand more than ever that the private sector, the governments, the academia, the civil society work together. Recovery will demand all the creativity available, so we can develop local talent and include small and medium enterprises in IT value chains. These are two priorities that we are willing, that we will to continue promoting as part of the industry's digital economy strategy, linked with social responsibility. So together we can complement ongoing efforts and trigger new initiatives to achieve these priorities, to support young people and support those who are reconverting their skills, seeking new professional opportunities, and of course, helping researchers and the most talented minds of the world to achieve with the power of supercomputers and artificial intelligence and blockchain and quantum computing to achieve the results that some years ago would have been impossible at this speed because we didn't have the machinery and the infrastructure that we have now to do that. So only by joining forces, we can pave the way to recovery towards a more sustainable, diverse, and fair societies. I reiterate IBM's commitment to join forces. Thank you.
You're on the floor. Thank you very much, Ms. Escobedo, for your very comprehensive presentation. I now invite Dr. Omar Castillo-Reyes, Senior Researcher at the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Thank you very much for joining us today. You have the floor.
Good morning, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Great, first and foremost, thank you for this invitation. I think that this initiative is excellent. The headway made with this technology in Latin America is very positive. I wanted to talk to you about some projects we're undertaking here at MIT and give you a new perspective on artificial intelligence. We're working on some very important projects, and I want to see how we can open up paths for Latin America. Here at MIT, we're trying to expand our frontier and reach Latin America. I'm from Mexico and I operate with a Latin American spirit. However, I think it's important for us to be able to use our tools to the benefit of society, as you have mentioned. But we really need to offer a lot of support for scientists, and we need to do a lot to make our hemisphere competitive. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we organize our work in this area and open up public policy conversations. Am I allowed to change slides? I'll start off talking about an event that we organized in 2020. That was when the pandemic was just starting in China. And we had it at the Meeting Lab at MIT. This was the first Latin American summit on AI, and the goal was to support Latin America in this paradigm shift. It was very ambitious. We were trying to have a hemisphere-wide strategy, but we think that's something that we need to be competitive in the global arena. Next slide, please. At this meeting that we held in early 2020, we brought together government leaders as well as leaders from industry and academia in the region. We addressed 5 topics. One was eradicating poverty. The second was improving education. The third was peace, justice, and strong institutions. The fourth was climate change and sustainable development. And the fifth was health and well-being. As you can see, these are all aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we think that these topics are key. They've been addressed yesterday and today, and they're really core issues that don't just have an effect in our region, but all over the world as well. When we look at poverty, education, our institutions, our legal system, we have to keep all of this in mind. Climate change is affecting everybody everywhere, and we need solutions for that. And then, of course, in the area of health and well-being, this is obviously a key component on our agendas. So we felt it was important for us to drill down on all of these issues and see participation from throughout the region to understand how we could improve in these areas through artificial intelligence. That is, how we could make AI work at the service of these 5 areas and create greater well-being in the region. Here's a picture. It was from January of 2020. There's a mistake at the top of the screen where it says 2021. It was 2020, so we were able to meet in person. And we saw leaders from different sectors from all over the region. We had sponsors from Latin America, from the United States. IBM was there, who just gave us a presentation. The IDB was there. And you can see the other sponsors that we had. It was a very positive meeting, and I would encourage you to read the book that we published as well. Here's the book. This book brings together everything that was done at that meeting. If you're interested, please feel free to take a look at it. This was discussed among all of the sectors and stakeholders that were at the meeting, and the book was created. So I would encourage you to visit the website and download the book. This is the basis for our organization of the next edition of this meeting, which will be next year. So for next year, well, I think we learned a lot from the first edition in 2020. And we want to have much more inclusive participation. When we talk about Latin America, we're talking about the Caribbean as well. And of course, we want to include all regions and countries that perhaps might not have seen as much economic development as countries like Chile, Argentina, Mexico, and Brazil. However, we feel they should still have a voice in what we are, because sometimes we don't give an opportunity to those countries or those people who are still a part of this. We share a language, we share a culture in many ways, but we want this to be inclusive overall. One of the key components of artificial intelligence is that it has to be shared with everybody. All papers published on this in academia are open to the public and not behind a paywall, which is not very common in science. Generally, you have to pay to access scientific journals. we have to look at what this technology means. In the area of education and research, we try to have this be an open area to explore so that we can have lots of competition. We try to make papers available to everybody and have this issue promoted around the world. It has to be inclusive, as we said. We want to have people from all over the region, and we want people to come from different spheres. We should look at technologies like blockchain, which are going to have a very big change moving forward. And we need to see the participation from all over the region and from all interested sectors. And I hope that you all can be a part of this meeting as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, in terms of research at MIT, we're working on a project called Neurosymbolic. This is funded by the National Science Foundation of the United States, the NSF. Just to give you a general overview of this project, we're trying to use artificial intelligence to help scientists like myself to do better work. I think this inspires many of us because we have a commitment to society, a responsibility to society, and our responsibility is to further the knowledge that we have in the world that surrounds us. This project is a big investment made by the National Science Foundation, and we're trying to automate this process. That is to continuously use data to generate scientific theories. It's a very ambitious project. We're just getting started. It's a long-term project that will take at least 5 years. And we're seeking a very revolutionary change. We're trying to automate this whole process and help scientists to better analyze data, to generate scientific theories more quickly. That is the impact that we're trying to have through these AI tools. We're trying to make research a little bit more efficient and further knowledge in our world. Next slide, please. You can see the logo for our project there on this slide. And with this, I want to try to give you a clear example of what we're doing. On the left-hand side, you can see a few symbols, and then on the right, you can see a neural network. And we're particularly trying to shed light on these two areas of research. Surely you've seen that deep neural learning is having an impact in many sectors today. And it's being developed in many companies and being used a lot in research. But the biggest problem with deep neural networks is that they require an immense amount of data. And they function somewhat like a black box. If there's something that we want to understand, it shouldn't be a black box. We have to be able to understand it. Really, if you think about it, the way we learn is through symbols. If you think about middle school, elementary school, university, when we learned algebra, trigonometry, calculus, we learned through symbols. And our brains can process that. That is how we process information as human beings, and that's what we're trying to do with this project as well. We're trying to use neural networks to identify information, which is very important, but we're trying to incorporate symbology to help human beings understand this better. Next slide, please. We also see opportunities for collaboration in this area. If you are interested in researching areas like probabilistic programming, formal methods, logic, program synthesis, programming languages, and deep neural networks, we would encourage you to send an email or get in touch with me. It's very important for us, I think, to increase our presence in Latin America. So if you know of research groups that are working in these areas that you see on this slide, feel free to share my contact information with them. And we'll try to work together to further this area of AI. And that would be my presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Reyes, for your presentation of such valuable information. We'll make sure to put it on our agendas for the next summit with MIT. The presentations offered today highlight the importance of identifying effective mechanisms to enhance public-private academia collaboration to improve competitiveness and the quality of life of our communities. I now offer the floor to the delegations who wish to comment on the presentations made during this plenary session. Venezuela? Venezuela, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. A short comment. En el año 2000, logramos hacer.
In the year 2000, we passed a law that created an integration and cooperation framework between the government, the business sector, and academia. We call it LOCTI, which is the Organic Law of Science, Technology, and Innovation. This was an innovative law, as stated by the name. The law established principles and concepts to boost the national science, technology, and innovation sphere. The facilitating role of the government was a key component of this law. On this occasion, I just wanted to mention some aspects of the law. For example, the creation of regulations that state that business should allocate 0.5% of their profits to their own strategies. Businesses should set aside 0.5% of their profits for their own strategic development. Once again, when we talk about science and technology, generally we're talking about strengthening research and applied research topics. That's excellent and that's very important. We call that the knowledge-based offering. However, as we offer knowledge and services, we also need to increase demand for those services. And a business sector development strategy for that is key. The goal is to strengthen high-level services that include research and training. Generally, businesses fight to grow, and as they do that, once they're created, they lose sight of their strategy. In a best-case scenario, they adapt their strategy over time. And the interpreter is losing the speaker who cuts in and out, but he will do what he can. And the speaker is entirely frozen. The interpreter cannot hear the speaker at all. This requires the contribution of experts to overcome challenges and promote growth. All of these issues and others can lead to an increase in inclusive demand. In order for businesses to ask themselves these questions, they need help from those who have knowledge. And for that reason, we need scientists, academics, and engineers. The goal of academia is to help businesses develop their strategic plans and determine demand, and help them determine strategic visions. Academia also has the role of offering research services to help businesses take ownership of knowledge. To establish demand, which we don't mention a lot when we talk about science and technology, were the resources that businesses should devote to their own strategies, they can coordinate better with academia, and the government serves as a facilitator or intermediary. For example, if a business needs to train 2 people in the use of specific software, it might be very expensive to provide a course on that for just 2 participants. So industrial associations could promote collaboration to increase the number of participants by including more than 1 company. This is the nucleus of growth and key to expanding a knowledge community. This is how we strengthen a national science, technology, and innovation system. At the beginning, there was a lot of resistance to this law. However, shortly after it was implemented, the business sector and academia began to appreciate it more, and today it is a law that both sectors yearn for. Unfortunately, the law was changed a few years later, and this requirement ended up just becoming a typical tax. So we hope we can go back to where we were before. We would like to offer this experience to you in case you would like to learn about it further. And we can also talk about the challenges and negative aspects that this can lead to. But this connection between the private sector and academia needs to be strengthened. We see a lack of it in our countries. And the interpreter lost the speaker temporarily. With these words, we say farewell, and we would like to express thanks for the opportunity to share this information with all of you. This has been truly a fantastic event. Thank you very much for holding it.
Muito obrigado a todos. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much for your participation. I suggest taking note of the presentations from this plenary session and to move on.
Minister, Nicaragua is requesting the floor.
Nicaragua, you have the floor.
We cannot hear you, Nicaragua. Nicaragua, sorry. We're having problems with the audio, Nicaragua. We're asking Nicaragua to refresh the screen and ask for the floor once again. Can you hear me now? I'm sorry for all the technical problems. Good morning to all. Distinguished authorities of the participating delegations, the delegation of Nicaragua congratulates our fellow countries that have made excellent presentations today on science and technology. We seem to have lost the video. The interpreter apologizes.
¿Me escuchan?
Can you hear me now? Yes, you can continue. I was saying that science and technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship is promoted in Nicaragua with our fight against poverty in favor of human development that is fostered by our National Government of Reconciliation. The alignments for this are contained in the Plan for Science and Technology fostered by CONICIT. We promote innovative skills among children, young adults, and men and women to train them in STEM to benefit new technologies. We foster the development of MSMEs through creative models and nurture entrepreneurship through our educational system. We also work on technical and technology training programs in order to improve productivity and competitiveness of innovation and entrepreneurships, where women play a leading role. We're trying to get ahead and also participate at different international meetings. We also motivate our researchers to present their research at a national and regional level. Thank you.
There are no other requests.
Okay, thank you very much again for your participation. I suggest taking note of the presentations from this plenary session and to move on to the sixth plenary session. Distinguished colleagues, after several months of negotiation, which has included 2 informal meetings and the holding of a successful preparatory meeting on November 22nd, 2021, I'm very pleased to present for your consideration the draft declaration of Jamaica, harnessing the power of transformative science and technologies to drive our communities forward. Document CD REMSIT, document 3/21. I invite delegations to refer to the draft declaration. Minister Powell from the delegation of St. Kitts and Nevis will ask for approval by acclamation. Delegation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Minister Powell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The delegation of St. Kitts and Nevis is pleased to propose the approval of the draft declaration of Jamaica. We are particularly pleased with the launch of the Youth Academy on transformative technologies. This will bring real benefits to our youth and our countries. And I ask that this declaration be approved by acclamation.
Minister Costa Rica is requesting the floor.
Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The delegation of Costa Rica would like to to state their appreciation for the Declaration of Jamaica, which we emphasize its inclusive focus and emphasis on transformative technologies. We also accept it and by acclamation.
If no other delegations wishes to refer to the draft declaration presented, I understand that we agree to proceed with its approval by acclamation. There being no objections, the Declaration of Jamaica is approved by acclamation. Colleagues, this declaration encompasses our commitment to making science, technology, and innovation a fundamental component of the post-COVID-19 economic recovery. We wish to thank all delegations for their ongoing support and commitment to this endeavor. Within the next 3 months, the authorities of the COMSET will meet to prepare the COMSET work plan for the 21-24 period based on the mandates emanating from this declaration. The Secretariat will provide the necessary information as we get closer to the date. I thank you for your support and collaboration to have this declaration approved today. We have concluded the deliberations of the 6th meeting of ministers and high authorities of science and technology. I invite the OAS Executive Secretary for Integral Development, Mrs. Kim Osborne, to offer closing remarks. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates, distinguished member states and partners. As we come to the end of these 2 days of discussions, allow me to express my deep appreciation to all our member states and partners who have joined us for this meeting. While this meeting coincided with a few other similar events in the region, I am grateful, I am deeply grateful that we had the 31 member states dedicated time to participate in the discussions on such a critical topic for our region. Minister Vaz, on behalf of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development and its Secretariat, the Secretariat for Integral Development, I congratulate you on your leadership of this ministerial and thank you and your team for the dedication that you've for the dedication in the preparation and conduct of this meeting. Our thanks also to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Permanent Mission of Jamaica to the OAS for their hard work in preparing for this meeting. It is not often that meetings of ministers move beyond dialogue and declarations. This ministerial resulted in a very tangible first for our region, the Youth Academy of Transformative Technologies. I thank Jamaica for its insistence at the outset to have a meeting with tangible results. I can safely say mission accomplished under your leadership, Minister, and so we thank you and your country for that. The young people of our hemisphere now have a dedicated mechanism for accessing training and acquiring the skills and certification necessary for their full participation in the digital and virtual economies, bringing our region one step closer to bridging the technological gap with other regions of the world. Next week, we will join Meta Facebook to launch the first training and certification on augmented reality under the Academy. Yet another important outcome of this ministerial accomplishment of this meeting was the announcement of the first 2 centers of excellence of Prospector Americas, from Hidalgo, Mexico on blockchain, and from Barranquilla, Colombia on robotics and artificial intelligence. We thank both countries for their contributions to this meeting, for agreeing to host the centers of excellence, and I encourage member states and partners to join Colombia and Mexico in expanding the work of these 2 centers, and also consider hosting a center at one of your research or institutions of higher learning. The need for data to drive our decision making is more critical than ever. All partners are ready and willing to join forces with us, and we should embrace the opportunities presented to change the trajectory of our region. By working together, we can, in this region, become leaders in science, technology, and innovation in the world. Distinguished member states, the Declaration of Jamaica challenges us to concrete action. I want to highlight one key element of the declaration. That is, the declaration emphasizes the efforts to embark on deepening regional collaboration and cooperation to ensure connectivity for all in the Americas. In the declaration, ministers and high authorities agreed to elevate this recommendation to the upcoming Summit of the Americas, an urgent priority to close the digital divide and promote secure, reliable broadband services at affordable prices in all our member states, with a special focus on access for women, youth, rural and indigenous communities, and individuals within traditionally underrepresented populations. I hope that we'll have the cooperation of all member states in ensuring that this declaration, this element aspect of the declaration, moves up to the Summit of the Americas. Passing or having approved the declaration is only the first step. The real work begins when we develop the plan of action over the next few months to implement the commitments that we have all made under the declarations, the commitments that the countries of the hemisphere have expressed that they want and that all citizens deserve. In closing, I would like to thank the team at SETI, Maryse Robert, Cesar Parga, and Ariane Quintal for their hard work in organizing this meeting. Distinguished member states, rest assured of the continued commitment, my Secretariat's commitment, to continue to do all we can to ensure that we build the necessary partnerships, coalitions, and alliances with our member states and all our partners from all sectors to drive innovation in our countries and address collectively the challenges that we face. Again, I thank you for your participation. I thank Jamaica for their leadership of this process, and I wish a good day to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Osborne, and let me also thank the entire team who has worked assiduously to put this successful meeting together. I also wish to make a few remarks. Colleagues, in the course of the last day and a half, we have deliberated extensively on important issues related to the topic, harnessing the power of transformative science and technology. We have certainly had a productive exchange of ST&I views, given the unique nature of this platform, which has brought us together a cross-section of ministers and high authorities dealing with the subject from a variety of perspectives. During our deliberations, several ministers and high-level authorities exchanged good practices and identified offers for cooperation to help implement hemispheric actions aimed at accelerating the recovery from the pandemic. Our discussions have served to build on the outcomes of prior REMSET meetings. From our discussions over the last day and a half, Jamaica is pleased to highlight the main results deliverables of this ministerial meeting. It was indeed my pleasure to have launched the OAS Youth Academy and Transformative Technologies for the Americas with you yesterday. This initiative is designed to train, certify, and expand job opportunities for 10,000 youth in transformative technologies by 2024 and 100,000 by 2026. The Academy aims to address the region's skill gap and workforce readiness to fill the jobs in the digital and virtual economy. As Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness said in his opening remarks, we must accelerate our investments in the markets and the jobs of tomorrow to get our fair share of these new digital economy jobs. In order for us to remain relevant and compete in the 21st century global economy, we have to fundamentally transform ourselves. The Secretariat is in the process of mobilizing agreements with several partners, including IBM, the U.S. Space Foundation, Amazon Web Services, the George Washington University, all of whom have offered to partner on the Youth Academy at last week's ministerial cooperation and partnership. Another important deliverable for the ministerial meeting was the announcement of the first two centers of excellence on technology foresight, a center of excellence on blockchain in the state of Hidalgo, Mexico, and a center of robotics, and A1 hosted at Universal Simon Bolivar in Colombia. These initiatives are the first of an OAS network of centers of excellence of Prospector Americas on 10 transformative technologies. All OAS member states are invited to host a center of excellence, and we welcome the indications of interest that have been so far expressed by some member states. Some of the other key areas addressed including connectivity and access to digital skills in remote and rural areas, the importance of policies and programs that promote diversity and inclusion in STEM education and professional development. Several delegations provided specific examples and shared programs to provide support to entrepreneurs and spaces for communities to connect, learn, and expand their opportunities in the digital and innovation economy. The importance of the technology, foresight, and science for decision-making was highlighted with examples of policies and regulatory framework to prepare member states to address global challenges and development imperatives. The issue of the MSMEs and public-private partnerships included presentations on how to build pragmatic and concrete efforts to reach business and people where all the actors in the ecosystem collaborate to effect change in our countries. It is my hope that we all seek to continue the dialogue and move with alacrity to advance through collaboration and joint partnerships the various initiatives that we have identified during our deliberations over the past day and a half. We are leaving very encouraged and on a positive note, convinced that our region can and will bounce back stronger and more positive from this pandemic. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, on behalf of the Local Planning Committee and myself, I extend deepest appreciation to Ambassador Audrey Marks in her capacity as current chair of CB, Executive Secretary Kim Osborne, and her team for the sterling support provided to Jamaica in preparation for this meeting and ensuring all ran smoothly and, as you will see, on time. I must also convey my sincere appreciation to the 31 OAS membership, with particular acknowledgement to colleague ministers as well as the distinguished higher authorities, other delegates and presenters. I thank you for your participation, which allowed for a truly successful meeting. Again, please accept my very best wishes to all for a peaceful and enjoyable Yuletide season and for a happy and safe, prosperous 2022. I look forward to our further engagement in the coming year. Again, I thank you and congratulations to all. I declare the 6th meeting of Ministers and Higher Authorities of Science and Technology closed. Happy holidays, stay safe, and we look forward to working with you all starting early in 2022. God bless you all.